Hi. For today's topic, we're going to talk about the Washington law governing uncontrolled intersections. I just had a trial in a case like this, and the jury came back and decided that in my case, my client was 20% at fault for causing the accident. I'd like to tell you why. First of all, let's talk about the law itself. An uncontrolled intersection is an intersection that does not have a stop sign, yield sign, or traffic signal. There are no signs at all. These are frequently found in residential neighborhoods throughout our state, and the rule is that the driver that you are to yield to the driver on your right. So if you are approaching one of these intersections and another car approaches at approximately the same time from your right-hand side, it is your legal obligation to yield the way to that vehicle. The jury instruction in this matter is a little bit different than the statute, however, and the jury instruction adds something, and it says, the right-of-way, however, is not absolute but relative, and the duty to exercise ordinary care to avoid collisions at intersections rests upon both drivers. The primary duty, however, rests upon the driver on the left, which duty must be performed with reasonable regard to the maintenance of a fair margin of safety at all times. In my particular case, a young lady was approaching an intersection. There was an RV blocking her view of her right-hand side, and she proceeded into the intersection. My client, thinking that he was in the clear because the RV also did not reveal her vehicle to him, proceeded into the intersection and they hit. Even though my client did have the right-of-way, because the jury instruction reads that that way is relative, and because he arguably, and I guess the jury bought this, could have come to a stop and looked around before he entered the intersection, given the obstruction to his view, he was found partially at fault. And that's not terribly surprising in a jury setting, because a jury is a group of, in this case, 12 people who are probably not all going to share the same point of view on how the accident occurred and who's at fault, and therefore compromise is usually the outcome. And that sometimes is not perfectly fair or the way I would have done it, but that is the nature of our system. So the point about this is twofold. Number one, know the law. It is very important that you understand what your rights are. But number two, the law, especially as it relates to things like this, always incorporates this degree of reasonability to both parties. Just because you may have the right of way, if you have an opportunity to avoid this action, you very well could be found to be at least partially at fault for it. And so not only should you know the law and yield to the car on the right, but whether you're on the left or the car on the right, you should exercise extra care at an uncontrolled intersection. And I will tell you also, just from an awful lot of years of driving experience and looking at these from a lawyer's point of view while I drive, there's a good percentage of drivers simply don't know what the rule is here and are going to enter that intersection, even though that they are the unfavored vehicle. And prudence and taking care of yourself and avoiding the accident is always the smart thing to do. So be safe out there. Thanks.